So, shadow puppets. One thing you can do when you're making shadow puppets, I mean, you can, if you want, find something online that has just a very generic image of a person so you can see the proportions, and then you could hold a paper over this and hold it up to the window and trace it. But, I mean, that's kind of a boring character, right? So then you could play on top of that, like, you know, so what if I want to give this person a big nose and maybe a beard, maybe some hair that comes down and is sort of sloppy, and maybe a hat, you know. You could add something to the clothing. Maybe he's got on these little knicker-like things and little boots with heels. So you can play off of that. Now I kind of think it's more fun though to just draw it freehand. It depends on how comfortable you are with that. So I just started playing with this little farmer-like guy, and I gave him a little belly. And then I just looked at this and drew it over here. I actually liked how this guy came out better, except that I had followed his body contour a little too closely. It looked like he didn't have any clothes on back there. So I just added a little flap to give him some wrinkles and some clothing. So, and then what you have to do with a shadow puppet, which you saw on the part 2 of the intro to shadow puppets, you have to overlap any moving parts. So one of the mistakes people make is to draw the whole puppet and then try to cut the legs off and move them if they're going to move the legs. But you have to draw it in parts. So with this guy, I'm just going to move his arm, and I want his arm to bend at the elbow too. So when I looked at where the arm would be, I figured the shoulder is going to be, the joint will be about right there. So I just drew an arm next to that. And then I drew the forearm so that will overlap, and drew the hand. So I'll go ahead and cut this arm out. And if you haven't used an X-Acto knife, it's easiest not to hold it like a pencil, but to put your index finger on top of it and press down hard. I don't know if I got all of that. Sometimes you have to cut through a second time. And I have double joints, so I have a little trouble with my joints. So I'm figuring that's gonna sit on his shoulder. Let's see, it's a little bit bigger up here. And then I'm gonna connect that here. And this is, I have a cutting board, but you can just put a big piece of cardboard on your table or something to, because you don't want to be cutting, even if you have an old table that's, you don't mind cutting up, you don't want to dull the blade of your X-Acto really quickly. So I'm going to figure my shoulder is going to be about right there. And so what I could do is I could put a pin through here. So I'm just using a push pin on foam core, but you can just use cardboard. And then I'll take it and I'll put this over here, pin through that, so you have a moving joint here. And I can pin the, let's see, I think I've got my hole. I think I'm gonna make this part of the arm first and then pin it on. So that's gonna overlap about like that. So I'll just pin right there, put a hole there. And once I've got my hole, I can take a little piece of wire, and you have a little piece of wire like this in your, the packet that I left for you. And if you have some needle nose pliers, it can be handy. So I'm gonna stick through here and through here. And I can just make a little curly cue. So I'm just gonna curl that around. And that's where pliers can come in kind of handy. So that's just so that will stay flat there. And then on the other side, I'll do the same thing. I'll just make a little spiral. And I didn't give you very much wire, but you don't really need very much. I'll just snip that off right there. And then bring it down. And then I have a little joint. And then I'll do the same thing on his shoulder. So I'll just put that through there, make a little curly cue. And you don't even necessarily need pliers for this. And then I'll snip that. And you have a little shadow puppet with a moving arm. So to put a stick on him, I'll want the stick that I don't want the stick to get in the way of his arm, and I also want it to be so that he doesn't kind of fall over. So I think I'm going to put the stick on the head. Let's see. Yeah, I think I can put the stick on the head, and let me try that. If it doesn't work, I'll just move it. So I put some sticks in your little packet. You should have 4 sticks, so if you do 2 characters, you should have enough sticks, but I'm sure you can come up with something if you don't. So when you're attaching the stick to the shadow puppet, you want to take a piece of tape and put it, don't put it exactly halfway, put it a little below half, because what you're going to do is fold the tape over and create a little flap on the end. I could have left a little bit more on that, but this should work. And then you can cut the paper off so that you don't have this really thick shadow where the stick is. And really, I should probably cut it up like this. Oops. Well, that's all right. Yeah, that should be okay. I'm just going to rip that end off. So then you're going to want to tape this to the puppet, and I'm debating about where to put it because I want the arm to be able to go down. I'm going to try it on the head, and you want the flap to go down. And I made this a little bit weirdly. I'm going to cut part of this off so that it's all right. So I'm going to take a little bit smaller piece of tape, and I'm going to put it on here and tape it onto the puppet. So I can hold that puppet against the screen like that, and then I can put another stick on the hand because that's going to lead the motion here. So that's a little bit trickier when you have a smaller area. So I'm going to use a little bit less tape. Well, I'm going to make mine. I have sort of a thick roll of tape here for this, but I'll go ahead and make my flap thing. So I'm putting that on and then folding it over but leaving some on the end. And then I'm going to cut it down. I think I'll cut it down this way. So I'm leaving a little bit of letting it flare out a little bit. And let's see, how much room do I have? All right, so I can put a skinny piece of tape across there. So I'm going to tear this so it's a little, whoops. All right, so I'll just tape this across like this. And then I have a shadow puppet with a moving arm. So when he talks, he might want to gesture with his arm so you know that he's talking. Now you could have a joint in the head because both of these are holding him to the screen. So you could have his head so it nods. You could also cut this part and then overlap the legs so that he bends a little bit as he talks. So I just made a very simple version here, but that's all you're going to have to do for this is make a moving part. And it is kind of nice to have two joints there because it makes him more natural than to just have the arm without an elbow joint. Now you can, if you have an animal like this little dog is made out of a heavier, like a mat board or something. But if you put the legs on so that they're a little bit loose instead of, like this one's a little bit tighter, it doesn't so much flop on its own. But these are on really loosely. And I'll just cut this down again. Whoops, that was a little bit long. Let's tear that off. And I'm gonna And doing this dog, I wanna see where the center of the weight is on him, because if I put the stick up here, he's gonna wanna flop down. So if I find where the center of the weight is, it's about right there, and that way it'll be more even. So, and you want to put it sort of towards the top of the puppet, Wiley. That was my kitty trying to help. So that way when you move, his little legs can move back and forth like he's running. Now you could put 4 legs on there, and then you would see all 4 at times, and that would be more fun. The tail, you could put a stick on the tail. It wags sort of the wrong way, but you could also make it a little more flexible and wag it back and forth so that it is crisp and then it goes out of focus that way. Now you don't want to, this puppet is, all right, let me just see how, this puppet is about close to 11 inches tall, so it's pretty good for this large screen that I have. You may not make it quite that big, but you could actually. What you don't want to do is make little teeny tiny puppets, because trying to make the joints is just really difficult. It gets too hard to tape on a stick. So what you're probably going to be doing, and I will do another video talking about making a stage, but you might have a cardboard box with paper on it, and this guy would fit in a cardboard box. So yeah, I would say this size is probably pretty good. So somewhere between maybe 9 to 12 inches is good. Let's see, let me turn this light on for a minute. So the way you light the shadow theater, you're just using a desk lamp, and it's a little bit clunky, but it keeps the shadows from, like if I had this behind me, you'd see my shadow. But if I have it like that, then you you don't really see the shadows of the sticks much. And I don't know if we can get, let's see if we can get a corner. I'll put him in the corner here. So here's what he would look like with the light on him. So, and I think that is about it for how to make a shadow puppet.